You think about it basically, ideal case, you want to basically a patient go to hospitals, basically, first one, you need to identify the good physician for that patient or right physician for that patient. Then the patient, give basically select the right treatment for the patient, right? And you know that this is never be perfect in these days because there's a lot of reason behind it. And but in generally, in order to have this precision medicine for the patients, the most important things you think about, we wanted to establish causal pathways for each of these specific diseases. Okay, all the diseases together. Okay, and this is easy to say, but it's difficult to do. Okay. And actually, there's a lot of data scientists these days basically analyzing a lot of data. You ask yourself a simple question: how much of our data analysis really contributed to understanding the pathology of any diseases? In what aspect? Okay, and this is very fundamental questions to all of us. Okay, and it's more like you think about, this is a big elephant is the pathology of a specific disease or all the diseases. And you think about we analyze a small data set, basically it's more like a blind people, a blind person to touch the elephant. Okay. And you when you analyze small data set, it's more like you touch the one part of the elephant. And the key question is how much you really, after 10 years, 20 years, how much you really understand the pathology of the disease in what sense. You need to think of something bigger, okay? And we talk about a lot of things in biomedical field, but you think of in the long run, how much you really understand it.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, there's two papers I really like a lot. One
Mhm.
is a paper is about all model is wrong
Mhm.
and yours are useless. Okay, and it's making clinical prediction model impact for patients. I think that's the some fundamental issues behind these things, not just a data set. There's some deep things behind the basically how you get to the data set. You know, why the predictive model is useful in practice. How do you really use it in practice? In what sense? Okay. Many people don't really understand what's going on with this. Okay. Even you're a top scientist, but doesn't mean that you really understand what's going on. Okay. And also there's another paper is about enemies of reliable and useful clinical prediction models. And that's basically the review a lot of basically statistical scientific challenges behind it. Okay. And this is all the things is basically reflect one fundamental issues when we do the scientific research. People usually because it's not fully trained. Okay, they only understand part of this basically. You're more like an elephant, blind people touch the elephant. You only touch part of that. Okay, and then no single disciplines cover all the things. Okay, and because there's need a lot of fundamental basically how to do things. And the foundation models, and in the last 5 years, there's basically fundamental, basically a shift from the task-specific models or fittings to the foundation models. And the success story is basically ChatGPT or cloud coding, all these things. Okay. And basically, fundamentally, they think if I have a large unlabeled data, I basically can do these kinds of the pre-training on this and the large data sets. Then with all these downstream tasks, I just slightly fine-tune the models, and basically I can basically achieve super performance in downstream analysis. Okay, and I think this represents a dramatic paradigm shift for the whole communities. Okay. And in general, you think about from biomedical sciences, there are three fundamental things is important. First one, the method and the modeling. And then the question is, and you always ask, what are the unique methodological innovations needed to build these foundation models? And you know that basically foundation model is one aspect. At the end of the day, what other people care about it? Because eventually you need to treat the patient. It's not about how, at the end of the day, you need to do causal reasoning, okay? And also you need you need to do model-model fusion and also domain-specific inductive biases from biology, okay? And also data and infrastructures. I think there's a fundamental limitation in the field because the data and the infrastructures. Our current infrastructures are not ready really to um, kinds of basically promote the kinds of AI into the basically biomedical field. Okay. It's not simply basically I buy another set of basically hundreds of GPUs. That's the basically is more like hardware issues, but there's a fundamentally infrastructure within the field. Okay. And this is a lot of issue behind it. And also, I think this is more fundamental than anything else. And another thing is application translations. Okay. And the most important thing is to be basically you need to ask yourself, well, could a biomedical foundation model deliver the most immediate impact and basically in what aspect? Okay, which other area could have realistically needed to both transformative about products? Okay, this is the most deep questions you ask yourself. And actually, in 3 years ago, there's basically a paper published in Nature, basically called the Generalist Medical AI. It's a foundation model trained while self-supervision on large diverse biomedical data sets. Okay. And then you basically say, then after I train this, and then I can use the zero shot or few shot learning and apply to downstream tasks. And the key question is how much you trust that and how far from that basically go. To me, is we are far from that. Okay. And then we basically, because if you're really working in biomedical sciences, you'll see that this is the generous medical AI is more like self-supervised learning, okay? And this is not enough. You know that basically self-supervised is not enough for biomedical sciences. The key things is because what are really kinds of the key mechanism link all the things together. And the reasoning, the causal reasoning is fundamentally important. And this is the basically, and this is the sum of these key things, basically behind it all the causal GMAI. And my definition of the causal generous medical AI, actually there are two co-constitutive the basic components. One is AI-powered multi-sited platforms. The second one is the causal pathophysiologies. The first one is basically regardless of what you're doing, okay, you're doing single cell, doing image analysis, doing whatever EHR, but fundamentally in this basic biomedical sciences field, the most fundamental things are two parts, two sides. One is the patients, another one is basically physicians, okay? And how basically they are interacting with each other, and basically that's the most important things. Okay, all other things are secondary. Okay, and the more fundamental is AI-powered multi-site digital marketplace that mediates the clinical encounter between the physicians and the patients. Okay, this is the most important. At the same time, among these basically stakeholders, there are other stakeholders like insurers, pharmaceutical and device makers, and the regulators. Okay, this is all these secondary to basically regulate and also contribute to the market. But but this is more like marketplaces, okay? And regardless of whatever biomedical research you're doing, this is more fundamental, basically from system levels. You think about that way. It's more like this is the government, okay? And the people are working inside, okay? And this is more fundamental. And but another level, the basis of this basically government or market or company is basically you still need to understand the causal pathophysiology of each of the diseases. Okay, you need to understand what's going on with the disease, what's the cause of disease, how do you treat it, what's basically the consequence of this. This is more fundamental. Okay, regardless of what are you doing, these are two fundamental issues in the field. Okay. And this is the ecosystems. It's not a single model. Okay. And many people are working on the area for a long time. They don't never think about this way. Okay. And the patient and physicians are the two primary sites. Okay. AI is intelligence layers that connect them. Okay. And then if you think about meta AI, basically, how do you improve it? I think this is the number one issue is basically, AI can contribute to. It's more like a matching and also reinforced learning type of things. And this is basically there's called a cross-site network effects. Basically, it's more well characterized patients. Then you basically you assign more value to the physicians, and the more engaged physicians you have more value to the patients. It's basically is a virtuous loop condition carefully governance of the data privacy and equities. Okay, and also there's another side is basically causal pathophysiology. Okay, and this is very fundamental because regardless if you want physicians or basically pharmaceutical company really serve basically patient well, at the end of the day, the most important metric is how do um, you treat the patients. Whether you can deliver good consequences or outcomes to the patients. The backbone is optimized, operationalized as a structural causal modeling, where the ages encode mechanic dependency validated by biomedical knowledge, randomized trial evidence, and the quasi basically external identifications. And this is basically fundamentally important and for all the biomedical sciences, regarding data type you're working on. Because at the end of the day, how to judge the importance of any research is it depends on how much your tools, your methods, or your data set really deliver the good consequences or outcome to the patients. Okay, that's the most important things. And why both are necessary? Because this is marketplaces essentially is the vehicle. The mechanism basically is more like physiology is cargoes. Okay, this basically the marketplaces make a mechanism actionable. Mechanisms make the marketplace legitimate. Okay, these are fundamental important. Okay. And this is basically CGMI compared with the GMI, and basically your basically there are several dimensions for reasoning, architectures, inference, target, robustness, and deployment. That's fundamentally different. Okay, the self-supervised learning is not enough because the real glue is basically link all the things together is fundamental. You need a causal mechanisms behind it. And also the second part, this is give you a general introduction about the whole definition of the things. Then the next is the causal decision making. And this is the engine of the CGMI. Basically, we need to specify the engines that convert the data into the actionable, individualized, and causal grounded decisions. Okay, this is super important. And also, this causal engine is super important in the sense of basically you need to think about fundamentally how do you connect the data? What type of data type, what type of data is important and the basis for your decision making in what sense, okay? And actually, fundamentally, there are two complementary scale of operations. The first one is the population level causal discovery via the knowledge graph. The second one, individual level inferences via the vertical and horizontal data integrations. And actually, this is basically following my friend's papers, review papers. And there are three basically pillars of the causal decision making. And the first one is discovery. The second one is effect, basically estimation. The last one is policy learning. Okay. Basically, the fundamentally you need basically this is a causal discovery is mainly on the population levels. You need to understand that you need to recover disease causal mechanisms. Okay, and basically, and which variables affect which. Okay, that's fundamentally important. The second one is effective learning. You need to quantify counterfactual reasoning to candidate interventions. Okay, that's also very important. The last one is policy learning. Basically, you wanted to optimize compute individualized sequential design rules that maximize outcomes. Okay, this is basically these three steps, key kinds of method or pillars are sequentially in logic, concurrent in operations. The knowledge graph basically, fundamentally, the knowledge graph contains the search space. The individual data update to the graph, okay, and basically validate the graph, okay. And this is the two sides operations. And basically, the first one is at the population level. Basically, you need to do population discoveries, okay? Why biomedical logic graph? The second is individualized level inferences. Basically, you need to do vertical and horizontal data integrations. Okay, these are fundamental. Both are fundamental important. Okay, and basically, logic graph constrain the searching space. Okay, and the individual data continually update the logic graph and validate the logic graph. Okay, this is the fundamental important. And for the first one, why do we consider the biomedical logic graph? Okay, and basically, this is fundamental issues behind it. You know that in this world, there's no single data set and available basically to help us really establish the causal discoveries. Okay, and for any specific disease in the particular population. And actually, this is basically we are just like the elephant. You know, we are more like blind people. Basically, try to understand this basic big elephant. Okay, fundamentally in the field, basically neither basically and the traditional purely data-driven causal discovery is fundamentally limited. Okay, you don't expect that basically I develop a method, apply to a single data set, I really can make this basically causal discoveries. And also the conclusion from the data analysis in practically is not that basic useful. Okay, that's the basic fundamental issues. Okay, there's no such model or such a method exists. Okay, and there's a lot of method associated, but fundamentally they have fundamental limitations. Okay, and also the evidence fusion solutions. Okay, this is very important because you're not, you think about who are the causalists, and actually it's not the statisticians or the people from mathematics. They are not a causalist. Okay, most commonly the causalist is basically professional people, the doctors, teachers, professors. Okay, because you send your kids or your basically you see the physician, they never conduct clinical trials, never basically, they really conduct trials and basically make the causal inference. They really based on of the observation, the basic evidence based basically causalist. They basically they treated the discovery as a fusion of the prior knowledge plus the data, and this is very important. And the biomedical knowledge graph encode valid entities and the relations, the human coverage and the machine actionable simultaneously. Okay, basically there's a ton of resources for doing that. You think of why do we go to the medical school? Most time basically we learn from the prior knowledge and also based on our own experiences, right? That's how the physician was trained and basically developed their skills. And what is biomedical logic graph? Basically, the graph of nodes and ages capturing biomedical facts like entities, relations, and attributes. Okay, and why? We summarize basically the older knowledge and discover new insights. And basically, this is more like a complex network data, and also with the scattered knowledge. And also, there's a lot of algorithms have been developed to basically to explore and also to learn from this basic knowledge graph. And actually, there are five categories of knowledge and graph evidence. Basically, we wanted to integrate, harmonize them into a single disease-anchored causal graph. Basically, first one is the literatures, and the second one is the drug information, and also variance and the phenotype, and basic relationship, and random clinical trial basic evidence, and also mechanistic biologies. Okay, then if we are able to really harmonize all the information together, the output is a disease-anchored, vision, basically evidence-weighted causal graph. Okay, then if we are able to build that, then this will be the structure priors for individual level inferences. Okay, these five evidence streamed, harmonized provenance, weights, and uncertainty preserved per age. Okay. And how to build a basic knowledge graph. And there's a lot of basically existing basic method for building knowledge graph. But traditionally, there's a fundamental limitation in basically how to handle it. Okay. And also the type of information contains in all the existing resources basically, and because of limitation of the traditionally people using NLP to do it, but there are some fundamental limitations because relate to NLP pipelines, and also what type of information you really wanted to extract from all these basically literatures and other resources. This is also important. Okay. And this is basically things. I show you something we did last 5 years, and some of our recent papers basically like Alzheimer's knowledge graph. Another one is basically our knowledge graph for mental health basic research. Okay, and also this is basically for we also developed this knowledge graph for UK Biobank related researchers, and actually basically you can relatively easily to explore our knowledge graph. And also you can write the basic questions. Basically, we have this chatbot basically for you to learn from that. And this is another basically the knowledge graph is a cognitions basically clinical trial knowledge graph. And basically we based on the records and in the basic clinical trial .gov, and basically we develop a set of new knowledge clinical trial knowledge graph basically to summarize the information over there. Okay. And also this is our the website of our knowledge graph, and we just finished the first phase of the knowledge graph development, and we are moving the second phase. But you can search our website and basically explore our knowledge graph. It would be great. You can give us some feedback, okay, and on this. And actually, there's basically the three discovery basically mechanism over the knowledge graph. And we know that the knowledge graph basically contains a lot of noise inside, but you think about it, basically, this is how we train the physicians, okay? And there are the key things is basically the three fundamental basically mechanisms. The first one is constraint or score-based learnings. The second one is a large language model assisted causal claim the extractions, and the third one is causal abstractions, basic cross skills. Okay, and basically you need to carry out all kinds of validations for all these basic kinds of the reasoning. And basically, there's several ways to validate all the causal graph. One is the concurrent concordance with expert curations, replication across the corpus, and RCT calibrations, ablations, studies. And this is the individual level inference in the two axes. Or basically, this is related to after your construction knowledge graph. The next level is individualized level inference. Two axes. Basically, we need to combine the heterogeneous patient data along the two complementary actions. One is vertical, basically, integrations. Another one horizontal integrations. Vertical integration is basically you want to stack modalities within each sub individuals. Basically, you measure basically all different your basic tech measures from the patients and all kinds of measures. Okay, then you integrate all the information together. And also horizontal basically integration is both you pull the individual across the sites and the cohorts. Make sure that basically you can deliver basically the right treatment to specific subtype of the patient. And putting them together, the two axes shape both the data we condition on and the population we transport to. And this is all kinds of, we have all kinds of the biomedical data resources compared with 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And the scale of the data is totally different. Okay. And if you think about 10 years or 15 years ago, we think about the data in gigabytes. Nowadays, we're talking about the data as a terabytes and gigabytes. Okay. And to be honest with you, this is basically the whole field is not a catch up with this. That's the only thing happened in tech companies. Okay, before that, before the one of the key reasons is because the infrastructure developed in the tech companies is capable to handle the data set at the gigabytes levels, but the university and also these small hospitals are not capable. The current infrastructure in all these places are not developed for handle that. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and nowadays we have too much data. And be honest with you, our academias and also basically are not kinds of capable to handle the really huge database. Okay, we can handle part of that, but not fully effectively. Okay. And in practice, basically, there are real world evidence. There's three types of the real world evidence. One is randomized intervention studies, okay, and also these non-randomized intervention studies, and also non-randomized, non-intervention studies. Okay, there's a lot of different data. Okay, the real world evidences. Because and if you get the data from randomized, basically, intervention studies, that's regarded the golden standard, but practically, that's impossible because for many cases, okay? And these days, we take advantage, we use a lot of these kinds of basically the data from the observation studies, okay? And these days also the electoral health record data is heavily used basically in the clinical trial, basically all the stage of the clinical trials. And in particularly, there are some the key tasks like the cohort constructions and the target trial eliminations. This is very fundamental things. If you really want to analyzing the observation study faithfully, and basically these are fundamental issues are more important than anything else when you start with. And also when you talk about the causal inference of the bias controls is also fundamentally important in the sense of because if you don't do the basically the first step cohort construction, the target trial, better immunization well, and there's no sense basically that it's impossible for you to carry out the causal inference and the bias controls correctly. Okay. And also, this is basically also fundamentally important to basically for the following basic downstream the I and the D stages because that's the basic two fundamental is one is the candidate prioritizations and repurposing and basically from the real world effective signals. The second one is the clinical trial design refinement, basically how to really basically do that. And this is basically we needed to combine the basically the information from logic graph, EHR, and the basic large language models. And basically this is the integrative basically view about all the things and the basic hypothesis modeling, IWD validation, and the logic graph update. And also, I give you examples. Basically, the real individual data is basically adenine. Why adenine is important? Because there's several aspects. One is basically talking. They basically is clinical trial data and basic connected things to 2004. And there's longitudinal studies. They measure all kinds of biomarkers basically longitudinally so that they basically see the trajectories, all these different biomarkers. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And for the different basically patient populations. Okay. And when you have this data set, you say whether I needed to feed a fancy models to it. From my personal experiences, I usually always start from linear model or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I needed to develop a method basically to focus on how to really link all different data types together
Mm-hmm.
instead of feed a very fancy models to target for some of these this is the fancy metrics. Okay, and that's the basic the goal. I need to understand how does the different modalities are really linked together. Okay, and also we also developed my method basically for longitudinal basically aspect basically how to link all these the different modalities together. Okay, across time. And also the effective basic relay. You want to estimate individualized causal effects and under basically the knowledge graph basically structure priors because you have this logic graph, right? You wanted to integrate with basically your causal effect estimations. There's a different method for doing that. The double robustness, machine learning, augmented method, and the EHR foundation models identify occasions. This is basically some of the fundamental tools in the machine learning or statistics, basically in causal inference, they're doing that. But fundamentally, the tri-immunization pipelines basically bridge interventional and observation evidence at estimation levels, not the data format levels. This is very fundamental important. And actually, the lift individual effect size into the basically individualized decisions. Okay, there's the some of these key methods, basically like Q learning, A learning, all these kind of methods, and also there's different constraints like non-horizontal clinical outcomes, equality of the outcome, fairness, and other things, and output basically all kinds of basically individualized decision making. And the policies are deployed as components of the CGMI marketplace, not as a standalone scoring functions. Okay, and this is basically give you the second part is basically the causal decision making. It's fundamentally think about it, this is the type of method we need to link all the things together. Okay, it's not something that's straightforward. Okay, this is more. That's the reason I'm saying this is a perspective because I'm trying to do that, but
Mm-hmm.
it's still a long way to go. And another thing is the basic vertical and horizontal medical data integrations. And And the vertical data integration is basically you try to link and harmonize the data across the multi levels of the biomedical and clinical hierarchies from the molecules to the population levels. Okay, because this is fundamental important, regardless of what you are working on. And at the end of the day, you want the knowledge you learned can be really delivered to the real practice, right? And the UK Biobank is almost the first deep phenotype of the studies, large scale deep phenotype of the studies in the world. Okay, asking simple questions to many of these people: how much do you really analyze the data set and scale the the UK Biobank in what sense? Okay. My lab basically analyzing UK since 10 years ago, okay, 2016. This is the most valuable experience we gain through this process because we can access all type of basically data type, different modalities, and really develop protocols to pipelines to process all the data. And then we link all the different data type together. Okay, this is basically one of the most important investment basically we did. And through the years, we basically we started from the imaging, okay, because that's something we are very familiar with. We know the medical imaging can help us understand the complex interplay between the brain and also human and the diseases, okay, and all other organs, okay, and the underlying genetic overlap. Because this is basically, you think about it, when you look at the diseases, many diseases are multi-system disorders, okay? There's a possible causal factors of brain structure changes resulting in brain disorders like stroke, dementia, and cognitive impairment. Okay, and this is basically this is one thing we 5 years ago we started to work on this brain heart axis. Okay, this is the bidirectional communication between the brain and heart, that playing crucial roles in regulating physiological functions and maintain the overall health. Okay, and also basically at the disease levels, basically the cardiovascular disease and also the mental disorders, they are not isolated. Okay, they actually fundamentally link with together. Okay, and also the acute basic mental stress also impact on this cardiovascular health. You know, this almost number one disease nowadays, the basically is the cardiovascular related diseases. Okay, and many people basically died of the basically the heart attack. Okay. And this is our science papers basically published 3 years ago that received a lot of attention from the field and in general biomedical field. Basically, we really, first time we really understand the genetic architectures of the both heart and the brain together. And this is the first step. We are moving forward to more details, basically the genetic architectures of the brain and heart and these things. Okay. And another thing is basically this is how do I link several modalities together. And another thing is basically you can by bank forces basically use the kind of forces to use the cloud resources. Okay. And but actually these days, if you carry out a whole genome sequence on one phenotype, or few phenotypes. Basically, this is the typical cost. Suppose you carry out the whole genome sequence of one phenotype that costs you $50. If you carry out basically 1 million of these phenotypes, and your cost of $50 million. And that's impossible for a lab like that I have. And actually, we developed a very fast and efficient method to basically for the imaging genetics. You can download basically you can use our tools. And my student basically open now work at the Meta. His basic package is well written. You can easily carry out basically large scale imaging genetics analysis. Okay, and we can reduce time and the memory consumptions by over 100 times, and also we achieve a lot of basically specific goals basically related to how to carry out effective carry out to GWAS analysis for the imaging data. And also besides doing that, also we host basically we created this biomedical basically knowledge portals. Okay, it's brain imaging genetics knowledge portals. And actually, we have a general organ genetics knowledge portals associated with this. We have a series of paper published around on this topic. And actually, the current searching database we have over 2,000 new imaging traits across different modalities. This is basically tell you how to basically really integrate the different modalities together. We
Mhm.
are, and it's easy to say, but it is difficult. It takes a little while to figure out all the details for us. And another fundamental is how to really do the horizontal basic integrations. Basically, there's a lot of water biobanks these days. And one question is how to integrate all the biobank together in
Mhm.
water sense. Okay. And also another set of the basically data resources is NIH. The National Institute of Health basically can have funded many studies. Basically, all these studies connect tons of data. Okay, and this is basically is a public available resources. The fundamental question is how to really explore and also basically analyzing such a database. Okay, you need to think about analyzing data at the petabyte levels. Okay, how you want to sense. Okay, this fundamental question is important. And the horizontal data integrations, basically, you want to integrate the data from multiple sources at the same level of the organizations. And many people basically are doing combination at the conceptual levels. They never really done that practically. Okay, that's not enough. Okay, doing theories and methodology development is okay, but from practice perspective, if you don't really make your hand dirty, how could you develop a good method that's useful for the practice? That's the fundamental things you need to think. And then we basically ask the questions how in what sense. Okay, you need to do a lot of small project in order to understand the things. And actually, fundamentally, there's questions people care about is basically called the externally controlled trials. And it basically is this is the papers published by my friends, basically, Yang Shu from the NC State. And she has a really nice review papers is basically discuss the two basically the key concept. One is a single armed trials plus external controls, and also another one is a hybrid control trials. Basically, is RCT plus EC augmentations. Okay, and there are two sources of the biases. One is coercive shift. Okay, there's a systematic differences in X between trials and basically and the external controls. And also the outcome the drift, basically residual the outcome the differences of the adjusted for X. Okay. And both must be addressed for the for valid the borrowing. That's the basically the different the down on the bottom basically the different this is the pipeline for carry out this. Okay. And also we develop basically we also work on the similar issues, but most of the examples we motivate as basically is also try to integrate historical data with RCT, basically randomized clinical trials, the data in ride sharing platforms. But that's the basically eventually we brought with the similar ideas for the purposes. We develop this pessimistic the weighted estimate for that purpose. And also we can develop basically the method for high dimensional semi-parametric inferences across the data sites. Okay, without sharing, we do federated learning. Okay, and in this paper, basically what we did is basically we have multiple sites, and we set up the causal basically models basically Then we basically develop basically the federal learning method basically for that purpose. Okay. And also we did additional basically statistical inferences um, for that and now cover the pooled estimate on the real the multi-phase data. Another thing is basically recent, this is based on another recent papers we just submitted. And this is a very interesting questions. This is the IDSB data set. This data set basically is quite unique. And why this is unique is highly heterogeneous data, and basically that's needed to superior the basic correlation effects. What does that mean? Because ADSP is consists of 50 small studies. And NIA, National Institute of Aging, basically give the money to all these 50 studies and to genotype basically WGS data set. And then they put all these subjects together basically to join basically mega-analysis. But fundamentally, when we first touch this data analysis, we say we just analyze the data without basically using any of these informations in this basically studies. We just treat them on the largest data set and do the analysis. But fundamentally, we find that the results, data analysis results from this data set is fundamentally biased, okay? Because these 50 studies is totally different because some of these cases, studies, only cases, and also some of the case controls, some of the only controls, and also this come from the different location in the United States. And the fundamental there's some differences inside, okay?
Mhm.
And then we basically say we need to do something on that. That's the fundamentally we develop, my students spend 2 years basically to come up a method and try to address the issues, okay? And this is the basically give you some aspect about this, and also the foundation models for a major data type. And as a data scientist, you know that you work on single cell, whatever data. It's very important to really you have deep understanding for each data type. And there's a lot of data available nowadays, and different data type, and but fundamentally in the medical sciences, there are three major data type. One is critically important. One is related to the patient records. Okay, the second one is related to medical image. The last one is the genetics omics data. Okay. And the natural health record is directly based on longitudinal patient histories. It's comprehensive records across the encounters. Okay, you have basically this on right side. You have all kinds of basically the digital repositories of the patient medical history and the health informations. Okay, there's all kinds of the information here. Okay, and this is the EHI data and all the challenges. Okay, and then you'll see this all kinds of the challenges and related to like the heterogeneity and the multimodal modalities, the non-tailed distribution, irregular multi-size, scale time, distribution shift, weak supervision, all other things. And this is basically, there's all kinds of models you need to develop from robust representations, temporal awareness, cross-site generation, or other things, okay? And this is the one of the basically our pipelines for processing EHR data from data on the left, and then the middle is the foundation model, on the right, the basic clinical use and evaluations. Okay. And also you are interested that this is basically our first major papers on the EHR, basically. We developed the UKB basic MDRMF, and basically it's multi-disease risk and multi-modality framework based on UK biobank data set. Okay. It's our first time basically looking at all the diseases together simultaneously and understand there are comorbidity patterns behind this. Okay. And also we recently we added this time sequence modeling, genetics, clinical trial text, disease names, and the drug information to build this rich longitudinal basically the patient representations for this, for joint prediction. And this is basically some of the specific technical details related to structure, sequence transformers, and basically you need to use a transformer on doing the embeddings and also clinical basic language models. And because we treat the EHR as a text and also multi model fusions, basically fuse the different data subtype together, basically for the downstream tasks. And also basically for medical image analysis, basically people are familiar with this, basically know that this medical imaging data is essentially for delineating the structure and the functionality of organs and tissues. Okay, and this is and actually the imaging processing analysis method is four major methods, from imaging reconstruction, imaging enhancement, imaging segmentation to imaging registration. Okay, you need to use different technical skills. Okay, and if you're interested, you can read my review papers. At least the cover. One is heart image analysis, another one related to the brain image analysis. Okay, there are two major imaging modalities these days. And also the people, when people develop different methods to processing the data, none of these pipelines are perfect. There's a lot of issues behind it. Fundamentally, there's very fundamental scientific questions. You need to think about how to address these kinds of challenges behind it. And you can easily get, if you are really push this kinds of field forward, you can easily get a paper published in top journals like Nature. That's what my friend did. Okay, and there's some of the foundation model like for imaging segmentations and also imaging registration. It's not that easy. The most challenging part is because when you have the imaging data from multi-models for different organs and fundamentally, and also different disease type and the different type of tumors, it is fundamentally difficult. Okay, and the people works very hard on doing this because this is almost basically one of the great challenges. And also these days, people are doing the foundation model in omics data analysis. Okay, and you have the imaging genetic omics informations from the genetic genes, DNA to RNA to proteins and the clinical outcomes. There's a lot of changes associated with this. The foundation model for omics data are needed not merely to impute missing measurements, but also basically to develop basically to enhance the downstream tasks. Okay. And traditionally, basically, computational models are wide developed for analyzing a specific omics signals. And this kind of model are recently scattered in the literatures. But the fundamental question is how can we really build a unified foundation model for omics data? And technically, maybe yes or no, but fundamentally, we know that there's a greater success for the in developing foundation models in the natural language processing. And but there's the intrinsic similarity between the biomedical sequences and the natural language. The word is very similar to nucleotide, amino acid, and the sentence is very basically similar to the DNA, RNA protein sequences. And there's a lot of paper have been published and on this topic. And it's good to see all this development, but at the end of the day, you also need to think how much of this kind of foundation model really can deliver the useful information for all these downstream tasks that are important in biomedical sciences in what sense. Okay, and the whole field is still moving forward very fast. But at the end of the day, how you have to link it to the clinical practice. The last one basically is the large foundation model, large language model, and the AI agent for the GMI. The large language model capture words. Agents must capture intentions. And basically, with grounding, we are merely icon text, not creating understanding. And actually, in these areas, basically, you have three key pillars. And basically, is a knowledge graph, okay? We develop at the beginning, and also we have all the foundation models, right, for all the different data type.
Mm.
And also the AI agent can help us to basically act and audit basically this is basically the informations, okay? The information from knowledge graph and the foundation models,
Mhm.
okay? And actually, this is basically the data unification, the governance, and also full capability, accelerate the speed, reduce the cost, and improve qualities in decision making and driving the measurable impact. Because we have the four key basic capabilities, like knowledge graph, foundation model, AI agent, and also actually also link with the large language models to help us to understanding and the structure all the information together. And I show you basically this is how do we basically build this kind of logic graph enhance the basically large language models. Okay, we build this large language models logic graph basically for this kinds of one of the purposes for the downstream basic large language models, and we can do reasoning and also basically all the things. And these days, the AI agent becomes extremely popular because this is nowadays one of the direct products like a cloud coding and cloud basically the tools, and they move very fast. Okay, and what is AI agent? Is the system software systems that use AI to perform tasks, pursue the goals, and make the decision autonomously. Okay, this is basically is super important because you think about nowadays using cloud, you know that how powerful it is. And also this is basically the also they had advanced usages is the intelligent systems that perceive their environment and apply reasoning and planning and take the utmost action into the achieve the basically outcomes. This is I think that many people, many groups are doing that. And agent AI is also very important in the pharmaceutical companies and big tech. And it's not simply a chatbot layers, it's the governed scientific workflow systems connecting data, models, tools, and expert reviews across the drug development. And we are basically for agentic AI, so we enter the agentic AI eras. Basically, there are three key fundamental things: is strategic investment, okay, and basically the companies are pushing the AI from the tools layers into infrastructure layers, okay, and also the workflow, the pressures. Basically, I and the D cost arise, timeline stretch, the clinical execution slows, regulation paperwork, all these kind of things delay the whole process. And also regulatory shift. Regulators are moving towards the basic AI-enabled real-time governable evidence systems. Okay. And this is basic old AI is particular towards isolated models and then point and basic solutions. New AI is basic scientific agent that connecting data and models and the reviews. The opportunity is moving from prediction to governed scientific executions. And I show you some of this in tools and basically, and this is how this is basically the reshape of this AI agentic AI is reshaped the farm value chains from discovery, translational, real world evidence, clinical development, regulatory submissions, and manufacturers. Okay. For all the near-term ROIs is the strongest in clinical operations, evidence generations, statistical automations, and the regular related documents, not only molecular generations. Okay. And also statistical automation agent, but then we can basically develop a slow agent go from the translate to the raw clinical data to audit ready the TFL basically outcomes. Okay. And there are some of the challenges, approaches, and outcomes. Okay, this is basically the automation statistical automation agent we developed. This is the end-to-end pipelines, basically from raw data standardizations, agent-driven automations to validate VTF and trusted outcome output. Also, the evidence integration basic agent, basically one-click evidence across registries, literatures, database, and the real world basically data. Basically, when you have all these informations across different domains, fundamentally you need an agent basically to link all these evidence together, and so that basically you can deliver the important outcomes to the basically downstream tasks. Okay. And also, we developed basically the medical agent reinforcement approach, basically collaborate with my friends from the computer science. We optimize multi-agent calibrations for the multimodal, basically medical reasoning, and basically consists of 3 stages of trigger: triage, basic doctors, specialist consultation, attending basic the physicians. We developed this curriculum-based
Professor
reinforcement.
Hongtu, so actually, the time is quite over. Is it possible you can wrap up in a couple minutes?
Yeah, just
Yeah.
one more slide.
Okay.
And also this is the performance for our methods, basically, which would beat this basically outperform the single agent and apply the basically multi-agent baseline across in domains and also benchmark data set. And what do we have built? Basically scientific plus intersect with industries. And also for some at the end of the day, whatever field you come from, basically, at the end of the day, basically, you need to have work on specific applications by using the analytical tools, big data, and the computational computing resources. The finding that this is technology layout for modern data science, data analysis. And this is the state of AI. If you're interested, you can join our group. And also we have this basically papers just accepted in JASA and acknowledge basically all these fundings and also my research.
Thank you, Professor Hongtu. Okay, so it's a Q&A time. So due to the time, maybe we can get just one or two some questions. Is there anyone who have a questions? Please unmute yourself and ask a question.
Oh, thank you for the nice talk. Actually, I have a question about the AI